because life is generous, you're given one like dominant wound to work with at a particular time in your life. And that can change and evolve. You may sort of get to an understanding and flow about that wound and then move to another and so on.
Hello, and welcome to the Connect podcast. This show is all about helping you connect to your soul's calling so you can take action on it. Because the sweetest success is a blend of discovering your purpose with the inner drive to bring it to life. I'm Sheila Botello, health coach, lifestyle entrepreneur, and mom of two, best known for my online wellness programs, mentoring, and self-love passion. Listen in for inspiring interviews, solo chats, and Q&A sessions that will move you past overwhelm towards what lights you up. Stop accepting good enough and go for your version of great in your health, business, and relationships. Let's get started. Hey there. Damla Aktekin is a healer, coach, and writer. She helps other self-healers and healers move beyond their energetic wounds to shine brighter than they thought possible so that they can fully show up in their lives to heal themselves, their families, and their soul tribes. Damla is the creator of the Chakra Bliss Healing Method, author of 40 Days of Shanti Mantra Journal, and the host of Conversations with Healers podcast. She loves holding healing space for those with energetic wounds and teaching bliss-filled healing, movement, and meditation journeys. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to the podcast, Damla.
I'm excited. I'm happy to be here. You were on my podcast, so I'm happy to connect with you this way.
Yes, you and I have known each other for over a year now. And I was a guest on your podcast last July, I believe. And I'll link that in the show notes so people can hear, because it was a fun conversation. And you're such an amazing host. So among your healing modalities, you are also a yoga teacher. And I would love you to tell the story about how you became a yoga teacher and what brought you into this healing space.
Yeah, I crashed and burned before I went into all of this. That's the short story. But basically, I studied engineering. I had my MBA, and then I launched myself into the corporate world. And so, a few years into this, like 5-6 years into that, I had a health emergency where I found myself in the emergency room with incredible pain. And afterwards, there was an erroneous procedure done. I had a leaking spinal fluid, so I had to I had to crawl. So basically, that's when I look back at it, I look at it as life brought me to my knees. And up until that point, I was someone living in her head, very mind-based, very like left, masculine, performance-based, because that was the way I grew up. And that was sort of the path laid out in front of me by others, and in part by me just going along with that. So when I had that health emergency, the choice was, okay, like I can continue as I do, which has led me to physical, like literally physical pain and coming down on my knees, or I can find other ways. And that started I call it the body-based approach. So I switched from the mind-based, performance-based to body-based. I became immersed in yoga. I started to take yoga classes, read books, do everything I could, and I fell in love with it. And more I fell in love with, yes, the body part was nourishing me, but I was going deeper into the philosophy. I was reading more about Ayurveda, the Yoga Sutras and Upanishads and all of that stuff, which started to feed something in me. Then, of course, life is, a series of tumbles and falls. And I became a full-time yoga teacher and a yoga studio manager. And around that time, I became pregnant and I gave birth. So that to me was another sort of shift, because I completely, through the process of an emergency C-section and the beautiful demands of motherhood, I completely lost my connection with my body. So then it was like, okay, the mind didn't work. being in my body wasn't working because I was just so tired. My body had changed so much. It was like physically painful and felt impossible to connect with my body. So I began to look for other ways, which brings me to the third phase, which is continuing to evolve, the vibrational phase. So I started to work with mantras. That was my first like vibrational healing pathway. I started to experiment meditating and working and healing with crystals. And upon to that point, I had taken my Reiki certification, but I hadn't done anything with it. But it was just sort of at the back of my mind, at the depths of my psyche, the yoga philosophy, the Reiki, like everything sort of combined and merged into this exploration. And honestly, at that point, it wasn't even, oh, let me become a healer. It was more, where can I find relief? How can I find relief as a new mom? So then I added to it the EFT tapping and the biofield tuning with tuning forks, and it continues to change and evolve. But that's sort of how I came to be a healer and a coach.
Wow, that is such a journey from going from completely left-brained, analytical, masculine energy into tapping into really the energy within yourself and nature to heal. Because it is true, like all of our world, it's all very energetic, and it's just fascinating to see the connection, but also to see just this span that you went through to get to where you are. And so that has led you into helping people heal their energetic wounds. So tell me, what really are energetic wounds and how do you heal them?
Yeah. So when you're going through life, so for me, I went through a huge phase of my mind-based phase. I didn't even know I had energetic wounds. And then the second phase, the body phase, like you begin to get in touch with them. And then now where I'm at and where I have been at is sort of, okay, like I'm getting a deeper understanding of what they are. But basically what energetic wounds are, anything that you may have experienced in this lifetime, or if it's in your belief system or in other lifetimes, that wasn't life enhancing and life giving. I don't like to use the word negative, but let's just say that it's something that hinders the flow of life in your body and in your system. Examples are, of course, abuse, trauma, any sort of family dynamics that were not spoken about, like dysfunctional dynamics. Also, accidents. Anything that you experience physically, including surgeries, leave a mark not just in your body, but also in your energy field. And some of those are, another one is moving and migration. So in my, getting in touch with those wounding, because what I felt in motherhood was just so deep of a darkness. It was like, here I have this light being in my hands. How come there's this incredible amount of darkness? But what I came to understand is that all of the layers of my wounds were coming up to the surface. So it wasn't just the layers of the moment. Yes, there was a physical trauma. I had a surgery to give birth, but also all of the inner children that I haven't yet tended to were screaming to be heard. And what I've come to understand is that another layer within that was the wounds of my ancestors transferred through DNA. In the timeless quantum reality of our bodies and our systems, we carry not just our wounds, but the wounds of our ancestors. So if your ancestors have migrated, if they have been through trauma, and if they moved, and if they experience any sort of wounding, that's going to be reflected in you somehow. So now the current work that I do is help people identify those energetic wounds and learn to move beyond them, because it's possible.
You mentioned intergenerational healing, and it's something in the last few years I've myself become more aware of. And truly, I think all of us, we've all originated from somewhere different than where we are, like from the beginning of time, right? Like that whole where the world began, and then everybody migrated. And now, where is your ancestry from? Maybe just tell everyone that.
I grew up in Turkey, and but my family continues to live in Turkey. I've been living in the U.S. for the past 20 plus years, but that's where I grew up. And then their ancestry goes back to European roots. They actually my ancestors in the 1900s, they had experienced forced migration, so that leaves a mark, definitely.
Absolutely.
But yeah, because the other question that I was asking at the time was, okay, like let's imagine this beautiful child that doesn't have any wounding. Let's have that, beautiful scenario where you have the loving parents, all the supports that you need, and everything that you need is given to you. But what I keep seeing is, first of all, we all have certain wounds.
Mm-hmm.
There's literally very little chance to escape that, unfortunately. And even if you did, when I met with someone who seemingly had a great upbringing, I was like, okay, like this has deeper roots than just this moment. Something else is wanting to be known and resolved through this person. So that's how I sort of stepped into the ancestral wound area.
And, it's interesting because here you are, you would consider yourself a light worker, right? Working in the healing space. And as I'm looking at you, the listeners can't see this, but the sun is kind of glimmering in on you. And like it shimmers from time to time and it's like you're glowing. It's really cool. It's really appropriate for our conversation.
It reflects right back at you on all the listeners.
Yes. And I agree with you. When I look at my own kids, for instance, and, my husband and I met, we were working at a personal development company. And so affirmations and positive self-talk and all of these things, like in really, growth mindset, it's been a part of us and we've passed that on to our kids. And yet all of us, my kids included, have various things that they need to work through in mindsets. And you think, gee, where does that come from? And I think certainly it comes from the society that we're in, but also there's things that maybe we don't see about ourselves that we've been carrying from our childhood that we don't even realize. And that it was passed on to us from our parents that they didn't realize they were carrying. And let's face it, in past generations, it was more about let's keep our family alive. let's help them, thrive in their life and find a good job and be healthy. But the internal emotional world maybe was not as much time was spent looking at that. I know certain faith practices, focus on that, and that's wonderful. But for the most part, I think years in the past, it was just like, do what you got to do to survive. So the fact that we are carrying a lot of that from our own ancestors makes so much sense to me.
And then the question becomes, what did you have to do physically, emotionally to do what you had to do? What boxes did you stuff in? What did you ignore? And then what's going to come out of Pandora's box when when you no longer can carry them stuffed in you?
Oh, yeah.
So,
I feel like right now, that's probably something that's coming up for a lot of people, like the year of 2020 that has existed. There's a lot of Pandora's box opening. And I think it's a beautiful thing. As painful as it is to be seeing the darkness, that's how you can get through to the light, right? You've got to actually travel through it. You need to ask the questions. You need to feel the feelings. And it's great to see more and more people doing that. So you must be really busy this year.
it's interesting because I would come back to the wound and then I'll come back.
Yeah.
So in our timeline, in our energy field, we definitely not only record personal events, but we also record the events that belong to our community and our nation or globally. So this is definitely making a mark, not just in our nervous systems, but collectively in the collective system. So what I've come to, the current thought process that I'm in and my understanding and the way I work with energetic wounds continues to change and evolve. But currently, the question that I'm asking is, okay, so I know I have all these wounds. And by the way, I have a quiz on my website that we can mention. It's called Your Energetic Wounds Quiz. And it's just 12 questions to give you an idea of where your wounding might be. So I have personally answered yes to 11 of those questions. So don't feel bad as you go through it that the numbers
Yeah.
keep climbing up. It's just a starting point, and I share with you some strategies on how to be with that. But
Right.
basically, okay, so I have all these wounding. I know my ancestors have. I mean, I don't even want want to go there. The migration, the loss, the wars, what have you. And I know all of our ancestors have that. And if we look through the history of time, all humanity has immeasurable wounds. But yet, the beauty of life is, like, for instance, I know what I'm working with right now. Okay. So I know right now my goal and challenge is my anxiety. My anxiety. And I know that has roots a whole lot deeper than that. But what I'm finding with the people that I work with right now, and as well as myself, is that we're giving this, because life is generous, you're given one like dominant wound to work with at a particular time in your life. And that can change and evolve. You may sort of get to an understanding and flow about that wound and then move to another, and so on. For instance, to give you an example from my life and my business life, like I'm in the process of, I know you reached out to me, but I'm also reaching out to some podcast hosts, and I'm, considering other opportunities to expand the reach of what I'm teaching and, helping people with. And as I do that, I'm very aware of what's happening in my body. Like I might write to 3-4 people, and then that night, like my heart is racing, and it's not that, I'm very comfortable in my skin. I know this is my calling, life's calling, and everything like that. So I know when that comes up, that's something for me to heal.
What a great way of approaching it. Instead of asking the question of, oh, why? It's like, ooh, what? What do I need to heal? Right? It gives you, there's like an action step instead of getting stuck in the emotion or the feeling and then just shutting down.
Yeah. And the wounds are dynamic. The wounds are smart because you and your system are smart. I often tell people, the moment you decide to work with me, the moment you hit like schedule and confirm the appointment, things are going to start to shift and change. And I will get an intuitive sense of, okay, like we're going to look at the fifth chakra, like speaking, not being heard, or the fifth chakra, or the heart chakra of boundaries, or what have you. So your system is so smart. It just takes your intention to say, okay, what's the next thing? What do I need to heal? And do I want to do it by myself? I'm a big promoter of empowering people and self-healing tools. I have a few online courses that help people with that. But then there are certain things, if you've lived with a certain wound like your whole life, you may want to have someone on your corner who's gonna be the mirror and the embodiment of your inner healer and help you sort of figure that knot out. What is in that knot? Is it just you? Is it your mom? Is it your dad? What's in this pattern that keeps coming up? And how can we move and open to other possibilities?
Yeah, we need help. It's so often we try to do everything on our own, but this is where healers and coaches and people who are going to walk alongside of us can give us insights that we would never really notice. They can ask us the questions we would never think to ask ourselves. And it's amazing when you just ask a question and you sit with it for a moment. The answer comes and you're like, wow, I never would have thought of that. And then you can connect those dots back to experiences in your life that are maybe holding you back or creating anxiety for you in your life. Thank you for sharing that. On this podcast, I love to shine a light on connecting to your soul's calling and taking action on it. So, how did you turn this healing journey of your own into a business?
Okay. So it was a combination of different things, but I have this, because I'm an Aquarius and because there's something about communication that's deeply sacred to me. I've always had a deep desire to share whatever I find useful. So it took me going through my journey to find, okay, so mantras are making a difference. Crystals, they're making a difference. Tuning forks, they're making a difference. And then as soon as I find something that works, my next impulse was, I got to share this.
I can totally relate to that.
So that, and then the second part was in my journey up to becoming a mom and through the journey of my pregnancy, yes, I had hints of intuition, and I believe I've always been open to that. But I was so used to operating with my left analytical brain, I would push it down or not listen. And after I hit rock bottom through going through the demands of motherhood and whatnot, not listening to my intuition wasn't an option. And once you open that part of you out, and for me, that was inner deep listening, I realized that I can sort of hear words and hear phrases of guidance if I let myself and tune myself into that radio. And then now it's evolving to pictures and stories and movies more and more. But in that space, one crucial thing I did was also surrendering. I was like, okay, here I am. I'm discovering all these tools. And so life, what do you want me to do? Mm-hmm. What do you need me to, like, I am surrendering. And my single intention is to be of service. How can I be of service? And when I sort of discovered to work with the crystals, the natural progression was I actually had notebook after notebook. I would sort of intuitively measure my chakras, do the crystal work, and then measure my chakras again, because like my analytical brain was still trying to understand this dynamic, like what's going on? Like, why is this working? What's happening? But at the same time, something bigger than that was at play, because I just had my mother-in-law visiting and I put some crystals on her, and I went through my process, which I now call chakra bliss healing. She like came out of it. She said she was hearing music. I wasn't playing any music. There were tears in her eyes, and she had been through some major trauma herself. Like she looked like a completely new person. So at that point, I knew this wasn't something I could just keep to myself. I needed to share it. And then my business, A Drop of Om, was born, and it continues to evolve.
Oh, that's a beautiful story. And I love how we always have places where we can practice before we really make a decision to move forward with something to give us confirmation. Are we going in the right direction? And I know in my own life, also my own family, my mother-in-law actually has been a very big part of me seeing the beautiful results of self-care and nutritional practices and body work and all of those kinds of things, because she's very accessible and she's become very open to looking at ways to improve her life. And it's so nice when you can start at that foundational level with the people that you care the most about, because it's real, the before and after. And it's just even more of a testament to the power of what you're doing. So you have that confidence to take out into the greater world. It's not just a physical experience. It really is a spiritual, emotional experience. And my spiritual background is I'm a Christ follower. I'm a Jesus follower. And I look at that whole faith construct and I see how our physical bodies, our spiritual bodies are so connected, and we're so connected to nature also, that everything is really intertwined. And so as you've come through that process, work in the online world is really thriving right now. More and more people are coming online. But when you got started with it, it was maybe not as mainstream, and you had to find your way. The tools were not as streamlined as they are now. Like, my goodness, starting a podcast must be way easier now than it was, when you started, and even, years before, right? So I'm curious, what is a hurdle that you have had to overcome in your life, whether it's been like in your professional journey or in your parenting journey even, that you've come through during this time that you've been running your healing practice? And what was it that helped you through it?
Yeah, well, I migrated, right? I grew up in Turkey. I went to college in Turkey. And then I actually lived in Germany for a year before coming to here. And when I first moved here, it was very strange. Even though I had lived abroad in Europe before, like Europe, Turkey is in that area as well. It was still like within the realm of what I knew. So that's actually another reason why I needed to get in touch with my intuition, because when English is my second language. So when you're, put into a situation where you need to make sense of things, not just by words, you begin to read people, you begin to read the situation. And it was similar with the business world, because I don't have anyone in my family who's an online entrepreneur. I don't have any, at the time, I didn't have friends who were doing an online business. So I needed to figure out, I built my own website, I built sort of my own e-commerce, and I figured out how the online thing would work. Like way before this, I actually had in December 2019, at that time I had like half and half my clients were online and half were still in person. Mm-hmm. And my intuition was like, you're going full online starting January 1st. And I did. And I now know why. So
that was a good call.
I think I'm at the beginning, it was like I would try to figure something out on my website. And it would feel like soul crushing when I couldn't, because I was also like, as I was still a new mom, I was extremely tired and whatnot. So, but I would come back the next day and try again. But now being in this, 10 plus years, now I know the process. Mm-hmm. Of introducing something new in my business or shifting and evolving it. And I also know my process. So I know how my body reacts to things. So
I think I know what you're going to talk about. Yeah. You're going to talk about what it means to run your business intuitively, which is going to be my next question. So you run with it. I love it.
Okay. So I was actually going to come back to the self-care aspect, because for me now it's even more important before I take a step, or as I'm taking a step, to say, okay, I'm going to take these 10 minutes to do my EFT tapping and come back to my center and move from there. And then in terms of running my business intuitively, it's I'm still learning too, right? I'm still learning to trust. I'm still learning to trust I may look like a calm person. I'm innately one of the most impatient beings you can imagine.
Well, you really don't project that. You do project calm. That's fascinating.
So for me to have had the patience to continue to grow it's like a small miracle. But the practicality of the intuition is this. I have there are like 6 or 7 big items, and then there are like lots of different items, maybe like 20, 30 item to-do list. So I write that list and then I forget about it. I wake up and I ask my inner guidance, what am I supposed to do today? And I do that.
Wow, that sounds so freeing. Not everybody can do that, obviously, but how beautiful that you can.
Also because, during this pandemic, I have so limited time and so limited mental, emotional, physical resources. Like I need to focus very intently on what matters.
Yes.
And not just like editing every little small detail on my website, but like the big brush strokes. So that has become my go-to practice.
A lot of people may say actually that, oh, I could never really live my life or run my business that way. But I think actually they could in many ways, at least in small ways, because you're right. You've got your list and then intuitively what is going to be the most important thing that provides the maximum impact.
And I think a lot of people already do it without realizing. They may call it prioritizing, but how do you prioritize? Who are you listening to? If that
Very,
makes
very true.
sense. And then the other part that comes into play is synchronicity. So if I get an email asking me about a certain thing, I know I'm meant to not only think about that or and see, okay, like, can I help this person with a meditation or with a product or with something? I had this free online email series that I had shared both in Turkish and English like 5, 6 years ago, and I'd forgotten about it. So, out of the blue, I received an email from someone in Turkey who not only took the course, and she said, Damla, I can't even finish my antibiotics on time. It was a 40-day mantra study, and she did finish it on time, and she was thanking me, and she was extremely grateful. And then she said, but I couldn't, one of the things I suggest is journaling as you go through the mantra practice. And the mantra I chose was very simple: Om Shanti Om. How can you add more peace to your life? And I was giving her and the followers just daily, like, bite-sized pieces and encouragement to follow along.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, once I read that email, the next day I started working on a 40 days of Shanti mantra journal. And now it's self-published on Amazon that people can follow. So it's like I and it was something, it was already written. I knew it was something I could put together quickly. So it's sort of seeing, and I could have sort of read that email and forgotten about it, but I knew that the timing was because I needed to create something that wasn't going to take like too much of my blood, sweat, and tears.
Congratulations on having it on Amazon.
Thank you.
So my last question for you is, what is your big vision for your business? What's next for you?
Yeah. So as an idealist Aquarius, my wish and mission is to heal everyone. But as I quickly come into my, senses and saw, first of all, I'm just one person. I have my limitations. And then second of all, not everyone wants to heal, right? But still, as I started my own healing journey, one thing I knew that would have helped me immensely were self-healing tools. So my vision is continuously to keep producing in programs and things that people can access easily and effortlessly in the comfort of their home and begin to heal. So for instance, right now I'm doing monthly healing sessions that you can join live or you can download them later as a recording. They work perfectly effectively either way. I'm interested in giving people insight into certain tools. Like I have an online course on introduction to EFT tapping. I have another online course called Tending to Your Needs, which I feel is basic. So how do you begin to meet the needs of the inner children, the ancestors, the cosmos that continue to live in you through your DNA and through your vibrational connections? And then my passion is to continue to evolve and change as a healer. I keep telling people, like, you got to see me now because like a week from now, a month from now, I'm going to be a completely different healer. Because I like to immerse myself in learning and experiencing and being open to what else will show up in my view. So each time you see me, you're going to get something a little different and you might learn a little something different about you. So that's healing energetic wounds is my passion, and it's going to continue to be.
It's just so evident because when you're talking about all of these things, again, I see it in your face. You're just radiating from within, not from the sunshine in the window this time, but it's really, it is your passion. And so I so appreciate you being here with me today and sharing more of your story. And so I just want to direct listeners to the quiz that you've put together called Your Energetic Wounds. Can be found at adropofom.com. I'll have the link in the show notes as well. I'm so glad you could be here.
Yes, thank you, Sheila. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much for being here with me on the Connect podcast. If you like this episode, please share it with someone you think would enjoy it. Also, if you head over to iTunes to leave a review, I'd be so grateful. Let us know what your favorite parts were and what you'd like to hear more of. It will help us have a greater impact elevating many more people to grow and succeed together. See you next time.